Welcome to the Kinesio Outdoors podcast, where my goal is to educate you on how to safely enjoy exercise indoors and outdoors, inspire you to experience life outside, and encourage you to live a more active life closer to nature. Today on the podcast, I have Nick Campbell from Fletched app. Thanks, Nick, for joining me. And how are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
So, I'm gonna just jump right into how Nick and I quote unquote met. I have a newborn son. He is 4 months old next week, and with that comes weird, crazy sleep. With weird, crazy sleep comes doom scrolling. With doom scrolling, you find cool things like Fletched App. So that's how I found you, Nick. I was really curious to see how you kind of were trying to find like optimal balance between speed and like momentum, speed and kind of penetration it looks like on your app. That's about as much as I looked into it and decided I
Yeah.
wanted to have you on the podcast because I'm just curious and I want to learn. So before we get into your app, which we definitely are going to dive into a lot, I want you to tell people who you are, kind of where you're from, what makes you tick, and kind of lead us into the story of what brought you here on the podcast today. Feel free to
Yeah.
take the lead on this.
Yeah. I'm 35 years old. I actually live in Greenville, South Carolina right now. I'm originally from Illinois, which is obviously a great state to hunt. And it's funny because I didn't start hunting until I was 24, which is kind of wild. I was always interested in the bow, but never really had a desire like in my heart to start hunting. And then I shot my first buck when I was 25, and it was like a piece of my body I didn't know existed. And I've just been a psycho about archery and ballistics and hunting ever since. So, but yeah, from Illinois originally. I've been in Atlanta the last 6 years, and I've been now I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. So I do pretty much every single sport under the sun. Grew up doing tons of sports. I actually graduated with a kinesiology degree as well
Oh, nice.
from Southern Illinois University. Not PhD, but just bachelor's. And I think for me with the app anyway, I just kind of saw there's so much ambiguity out in archery. Like there's not anything that quantifies the data. And to me, it just drove me nuts because you're talking to somebody and they're like, hey, my setup's really good and I'm doing this and this. And you're just kind of like, well, it's probably pretty good compared to mine. I don't really know. And so figuring out those numbers was really what drove me to create the app in general. What I do for my day job is I do medical device sales.
Mhm.
So right out of college, I did ortho for 2 years. And then I've been doing hernia for 9.5 years, abdominal wall reconstruction for surgery. So that's my day job. And this is kind of my side gig. And it's been a fun journey so far.
That's super cool. I'm going to backtrack to a few things. How did you start hunting at 24? So you're what, 2 years post bachelor's? Did you see it on TV? A buddy took you? How'd that happen?
Yeah, I was actually dating the girl, and her dad was super into hunting. And him and I were interested, like, he was very into archery and archery hunting. I was just into archery only. So I was always shooting the bow. And then he was like, dude, you should try to hunt. And I was like, yeah, I guess I've never really thought of it. Like, um, you know, sure, I'll do it. So I went and got my hunter safety course. And then I went and did a couple hunts and then shot a really nice 148 point buck for my very first deer ever.
That's incredible.
And
Let's pause
once
there for a
I,
second. That takes a lot for an 8 point to be 140 inches. That's a good deer. Was that in Illinois?
yeah, yeah, I was in Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tracks.
Um, and so, and once that happened, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I can't believe I haven't been doing this my whole life. And then you start to learn how good Illinois is and all those things. I'm like, man, think of all the deer I didn't shoot growing up as a kid and not hunting.
Mhm.
So that's what I guess got me into it then.
Super cool. So now, because I feel like this will help tell the story of you developing your app, what did you start hunting with? So you got that 8 point and that Illinois 8 point. I'm sure it was like a 220 pound buck, just a corn-fed beast. What were you shooting and what were the results of what you were shooting?
Yeah, at that time I was shooting. So I've actually shot the same, honestly, I've shot the same bow for a long time. I just got this Hoyt this year. So this is going to be my first year with this bow. But um, I've shot a Matthews MR7 Monster, a 2013 version that I bought in 2014 bare bow in college. And I have literally shot that until last year. And
Nice.
the reason why is because, man, the with the ballistics and just the chrono of it, like it's throwing my arrows so well. I mean, I'm still shooting, four at that time, or like last year was a 443 grain arrow
Yep.
at 292 feet a second, which is, solid. And um, I was just like, I don't really need to spend 2 grand just to go up another 5 feet a second.
Yep.
But I have a story with this Hoyt bow that it really surprised me. So that's why I bought it actually.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair.
but
What's your draw length and draw weight? Because I know people are going to be thinking about that after those numbers they just heard.
Yeah, well, so I draw 29, but when I first started hunting, when I shot my very first buck, I was shooting 27 because I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
So you
So I
have
was literally,
one of these bent arm things? Yeah.
oh yeah, and I have no like, you don't know what you don't know at that time.
Yeah.
So I was shooting 27-inch draw, and I couldn't tell you my speed or my weight or anything from my arrow. I was shooting a Carbon Express
Hmm.
red
Yep.
for my first setup because I was just like, oh, Carbon Express is the best at that time, and um, so yeah, I literally don't know any of my ballistics from then. I couldn't tell you. But now everything's proper now. So now I shoot 29 inches. And
Hmm.
it's wild because that same 443 grain arrow that was shooting 292 out of my Matthews at 70 pounds.
Yep.
This Hoyt is the RX Ultra 10.
Hmm.
Um, and it's set at 80 pounds. Like right when I got it, I think it was pulling like 81 and a half.
Yep.
And I ran the same exact arrow through the chrono and it ran 314.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And I was like, wow, okay. So now my setup right now is I run 468 because I put a 25 grain 125 on the front.
Yep.
I went from really heavy up front. I've done the whole thing of going super heavy arrow to
Hmm.
super light arrow and just everything in between. I think the biggest thing I didn't like about the heavy arrow was that your pins start to gap a lot.
Yep.
So like 3 yards matters when your pins are gapped a lot. When your pins are super tight, 3 yards is not a big deal.
Yep.
And so it takes a lot of the deviation out of your shot. So to me, trying to get back to speed, but also keeping the momentum and kinetic energy up is super important to me. And obviously the FOC, I don't know if you've looked at the new Easton ballistic study that just came out.
No, not yet. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Engineer. If
but
I wasn't a PhD in kinesiology and a professor, I would have done mechanical engineering, like for sure. I
oh
guarantee
yeah,
I would have done. Yeah. So when anytime they
yeah,
talk about that stuff, I'm like, you're speaking my language, and I get real excited. So no, I haven't checked it out yet. But if you want to spoil a little bit, feel free.
yeah. I mean, there's I think the Fletches were pretty interesting on how they performed. And I already shoot the DCA Super Saber.
Yep, that's what I shoot.
I'm probably going to change to the Mini Saber this year.
Okay.
But the Super Saber and Mini Saber are both really, really good in that study.
Yeah. So let's again, people are going to be curious. What are you shooting up front, and what are you hunting?
Oh yeah, sorry. So um, for for upfront, just 125 grain G5 mega meat.
Nice. Yep.
I've um, I I don't know, man. I've shot a lot of two blade. The everything. I mean, I was shooting like the OG Rage hypodermics back in. That's
Yep.
actually where I killed my first deer with a Rage
Okay.
hypodermic,
Yeah.
and it worked well. I mean, but I also shot it well too, right?
Yeah.
The two blade system I think are great, whatever. I just personally want a three blade. Like
Okay.
I want a three blade. I think the Mega Meat, the entrance hole is almost unmatched, and the
Yeah.
exit hole is just as big, and the blood trails are insane with the Mega Meat.
Yeah, and let's talk about that real quick, two blade versus three blade, because I've shot a handful of animals with a 2 inch 2 inch sever is what I've used most commonly,
Yep.
and you get that's almost like a slap cut, and you get a nice slit, and
Hmm.
almost I kind of think of it as like the shape of an eye, so kind of like that
Yeah.
convex concave meeting.
Like ellipse. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And what you're talking about, Nick, with that three blade expandable is you get a triangle and you truly get a more uniform hole versus that kind of slip cut. So that is something that I've definitely noticed, and that is something that's intriguing to me about those three blades versus the two blade. So just
Well,
just that I touch
you
on
get
that.
that. Yeah, you get the triangle, and that animal is not going to be able to close
Yep.
that wound,
Yeah.
even if they find water. Um, and that was a big thing because I mean, like I've been bow hunting 11 years now, and yeah, I've lost a couple deer, and it's like the worst feeling
Yeah.
ever. It's the worst. I mean, I've had stuff from like 5 years ago that I still think about today. Um, and I was actually listening to Cameron Haynes on a podcast, and he was talking about if your entrance cut is big enough, even if the deer's not dead or something, you're still going to be able to find that deer or animal more than likely
Hmm.
because that wound channel is not going to close.
Yep.
And the amount of times that you know, dried up blood or like lost blood, but still found the deer, it's like, okay, well, thank God I found this thing. And the ones I didn't find, I'm like, man, if I was shooting a 3 blade, I wonder if I would have found that deer, just because of the wound not closing. So for me, that's really important. And then the rest of my arrow, I don't go super crazy heavy on the front like I do. My FOC is around like 18. So
Okay.
it's decently high, but it's not like outrageous.
Hmm.
I shoot the Victory HLRs because I wanted a little bit uh, lighter arrow this year. I've been shooting like 515 ish grain arrows, and I went
Hmm.
down to like 440. I wanted to get around 450 this year on my arrow build. So I get
Yeah.
last year was 440. This coming year is going to be 468. I'm still shooting that arrow 307 with a
Hmm.
468 grain. Um, and then yeah, my Fletches, the DCA Super Sabers. I'm going to go the mini sabers this year, and then the knock. I don't know, man. I'm a little bit anti uh lit knock. I think the lit knocks are great for YouTube videos and all those things. But first of all, you don't want a lot of weight in the back of your arrow. I don't think that really matters a huge ton, but it definitely does. My biggest issue with them is I cannot find one that fits my string well. And what really opened my mind to that is I don't know if you ever bear shaft tuned your arrows?
Yep.
Okay. And like, so even before you fletch them, you kind of figure out which way the arrow is spinning.
Yep. Yeah, you clock it.
Correct. Yeah. You clock it. And so I was like, well, I'm going to clock these with all I've shot nocturnals for like 4 or 5 years.
Hmm.
But I'm going to clock these with my nocturnals because that's what I'm going to be shooting. So I want to see how it spins. And I was getting ones that were spinning like right, left, not, didn't look like they moved at all. And I was like, what's going on here? And I shot like 5 yards, 10, 20, etc. And then I went and I was like, I couldn't get a consistent group of like spin. And
Yep.
so, but I knew it was going to be twist right. I just wanted to confirm it.
Yeah.
And so I went in and got the regular factory knocks on, and it was right, 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 right. And I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
So these things I don't think sit on the string as well, even though they look like they do. I don't think they sit on the string as well as we think.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed. Before I have you explain clocking your arrows with your bear shaft, I have experienced because when I first got back into it, I was shooting micros, 166s, the Victory VAP TKOs, and I was shooting their
Yep.
light knock. And with that one, so I shot a bear with it at a sizable distance. And it was nice because the blue knock lit up. I knew exactly where I hit it. I was telling my dad, this bear's dead. He didn't believe me, no blood. The hair soaked up with the blood. And then we got 5 yards from the bear and it was splattered blood everywhere. It was incredible. So it was really cool for that. But I have noticed more inconsistent flight. So, question for you: have you retied your serving? Have you reserved your bow?
No,
Did
no.
that because that's something that could help. I have done that
Yeah.
before and have um, more consistent kind of like bear shafts, a more consistent grouping. Is
Yep.
I would try to reserve it so that way it matches more closely to those lighted nocks. I've done that and that's helped.
Yep.
I also lighted nocks. I just have had them. It's a really soft plastic. And I think because if they used a harder plastic, they would be like 35 grains, which no one's going to want to shoot a 35 grain knock. They're going to want more of that arrow weight in the front of their arrow because that's what's actually hitting the animal. So I have noticed a lot softer. And if you shoot them enough, the knock, if you think of a knock as a U, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. As the string pushes down into it, you'll actually start to get the U kind of stretching out to the side, and then you'll get a looser knock fit. I've noticed that more quickly with lighted knocks as well. So those are things that I've noticed. Before we move on, because I'm gonna next have you talk about the origin story of this app, because I'm just super curious. Why don't you explain clocking your arrows for everybody, the process that you did to do that? Not everybody's going to know what that means just by saying clocking.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty simple, I guess. The way I do it anyway is just when you get your like say you get your strings redone. Generally the Bowtech's going to be able to tell you these are going to they're going to come out and your arrow's going to be naturally twisting right or left in the
Mhm.
flight naturally, just be the way they did the string.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
based on the rotation that the center serving is. If it's one direction versus the other, then it'll clock opposite. I always get it mixed up.
I think it's opposite, yeah.
Yeah,
I
it is
think.
opposite. I'm personally don't think I'm a good enough shot to be able to be like, oh yeah, my arrow's clocking this way, but I've got my fletching the other way. At 80 yards, I'm noticing a 1 inch group difference. I don't know if I'm a good enough shot for that. Some people are, I'm not, but that's what Nick's talking about here. So go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. And so you want to, like, I always like to verify it. Some people will just say, oh, my Bowtech said this, so I'm just fletching all my veins with the
Yep.
helical right or something like that. I like to verify it. So I'll go out there with a bare shaft. Like, I'll have my arrow cut carbon to carbon, and I'll have everything on my arrow except for the veins
Mhm.
that I want to use. And then I'll just shoot like three or four in a target side by side. And you can literally see how they spin in. Like, so if your arrow starts like this, all four of them are going to sit just like this in the target, bum, 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 bum. And you're like, okay, you start with the starting point of like, okay, I know I had this part up. And so it's to the right now. I know it's clocking right. And so
Yep.
it's naturally clocking right. So when I do my helical on my vein and set up the arrow, then that arrow is going to naturally be spinning right. Because if you put a helical left, then it's going to come out pushing, kind of pushing against what the arrow naturally wants to do. And you can kind of get a quick little um,
It's like a
like a
knuckleball.
knuckleball.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with that, I'm pretty sure you did this, Nick. I'm just going to add this for those that weren't able to see your hands moving. What you can do is on black carbon arrow shafts, just take silver Sharpie and just mark and index your arrows. And then what I've done in the past, I've done this before, and then I realized I just don't think I'm a good enough shot to for it to make a huge difference. So I just take it for what the serving's rotated at, and then I just trust it. Um, Maybe I'm being lazy, but at 80 yards, I'm not grouping tighter than 5, 7 inches usually. So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
for others it makes a difference. I don't think it does for me. Anyway, so what I've done is I'll shoot at, 2 yards, 4 yards, 6 yards. And then like Nick's saying, you can kind of see the story of your arrows clocking. And you'll see it going from, 12 o'clock if it's going to be spinning left, which is most common for right-handed bows based on the serving of the string, based on the string wrapping and then the serving so that way it doesn't unravel the string under it, is you'll see, 12 o'clock, then you might see like 10, then you might see like, 9:30, and it'll just kind of go, that would be counterclockwise. You'll kind of see it rotate around that way, and then you'll do that left helical. So
Yep.
that's what I've done. I'm sure you did that too. I just, again, not everybody can see the YouTube, so I thought I'd explain that.
Yeah.
So with all this, it's obvious that you're a total geek about archery, which is why I wanted you on here. So how did this play into the Fletched app? And kind of what started your deep dive into this? Because this is something that took some time. It's very obvious that making this took
Yeah.
some time. So what started this? What's kind of the origin of it? And then walk us through what Fletched app does.
Yeah. I think I was just, again, there's such a lack of archery knowledge out there. There's so much unseen and so much ambiguity in arrow setups. What do I need for this animal? Well, what do I need for this animal? And, I went to, I don't know if you know Josh Jones
Yeah,
out
I
of
met him
Podium
at his
Archer.
shop one time. I live right by his shop, so I met him just once.
Okay, cool. Oh, so you're over in okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yep.
So I met him in Nashville for
Hmm.
his 1 year thing. And
Yeah,
I asked him, I said, what's your biggest question that you get from archers? He said, arrow setup is my number one thing that he
yeah,
gets.
for sure.
And I was like, okay, well, that's very telling. And so bow hunters just don't know their setups at all. And I've also found that there's too many, one of the biggest problems is there's too many variables.
Hmm.
Like you're looking at weight, FOC, kinetic energy, momentum, speed, and everyone's like, man, I just want to shoot my bow. Like I
Yeah.
don't know all this stuff. And some people are very into it, like me and you. But some people are just like, hey, I just want to shoot. And other people are like, hey, I trust the shop. Whatever the shop gives me is gonna be perfect. And it's not always the case. I would almost say rarely the case. And so Fletch gives you like uh, an exact setup score in one number. And
Okay.
so you can kind of quantify it and say, okay, this is an aero ballistic score. I call it an ABS. And it all measures against the same exact medium, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So, so you and I can put our metrics in the app and for whitetail deer, a
Yep.
Midwest whitetail, and maybe I get a 91 and you get like a 92. So, okay, we're in a good spot and your setup's actually a touch better than mine ballistically. Now, if you get a 91 and a 92, it doesn't mean it's 91% chance you're going to kill the deer. I've had that
Yeah,
question
yeah.
before. It's not that, and I need to maybe make that more clear. It's just a strictly a ballistic score, and there's a lot that goes into it. But that's kind of the high level of what came about it and how it came. And one quick story is I was when I first started making the app, I was like talking to one of my buddies who shoots and hunts, and I was like, "Hey, what's your arrow weight and speed?" He's like, "Oh, the shop set it all up for me," and he literally had the shop ticket. He
Yep.
sent me a picture of it, and I put his metrics in for the shop ticket, and like so my at a 40 or excuse me 468 grain 307 speed for a Midwest whitetail, I get a 91 in the ballistic score.
Hmm.
And I put his metrics in and it came back as a 52.
Hmm.
And he was like, and it kind of opened his eyes like, oh, because he was shooting way low poundage. He was shooting like a 370 grain arrow, you know.
Wow, that's really
Yeah.
light.
And the shop was just like, oh no, this will work for you. It's perfect, you know. And so it kind of helps you like kind of see where you're at and if you want to optimize. So I always say for the new person, it helps educate you. For the person who's very tenured, it helps optimize your setup and kind of makes things that we don't see seen.
Yep. So cool. I have a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
And I'll try to do this pretty systematically so we can tell a really coherent story. I first of all want to start with, and I've had this discussion. I did a podcast on how bullets, how effective like copper bullets are. I'm originally from California. We had to use copper bullets. I like copper bullets. People can hate it. That's fine. I've had really good results with copper bullets, and part of the way that copper bullets kill is, or bullets kill rather, is hydrostatic shock. It shocks the body because when you think about it, let's just use a 308 and let's say it mushrooms to 150%. Now you're looking at, let's see, you're looking at like a half-inch hole through an animal. So if you put a half-inch hole through the lungs, that's not that big when you really think about it.
Sure.
Half-inch hole through the lungs of elk, a deer, it's not that big of a hole. And what happens on the inside is where that devastation occurs, right? The
Yeah.
energy is going to be so powerful in the lungs. The lungs can collapse. The lungs are going to rupture. You'll see the where it looks like the lungs actually like exploded and they just won't have any like structure left to them. You just see like parts of the quote balloon of the lungs just kind of spread out. Arrows are different. Arrows are not fast. There is little to, I'm going to say no hydrostatic shock. And arrows kill through hemorrhaging. That's why we use broadheads. That's why expandables are so popular. Because in expandable, if you do, is Mega Meat 2 inch circle? I think it is, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm talking about, I think it's technically
Oh,
bigger than that.
I think it is. It's like 2 1/4. I don't think it's two and a half.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 1/4.
I think it's big.
So
Yeah.
if
It's
you get a
bigger than that.
2 1/4 inch hole, that's where Nick was talking about earlier. It's going to be harder to close that up. So now that is going to be cutting through more tissue, cutting through more capillaries, arteries, veins, possibly the heart. And that's where you're going to see the blood pouring out. And that's where you have those nice blood trails. So killing with the bow is different than killing with the gun as far as like what happens on the animal. So I just
Yeah.
want to start there for everybody. Next, I
And
want to talk. Go ahead.
real
Yeah,
quick to add in, I think with archery, we kind of play what I think about is like, I don't know, do you play golf?
I played it once the other day.
Okay. Okay. So when you play golf, lots of people anyway that like are like me are not very good. You kind of play to your miss. Like, okay, if I miss, I'm still going to be safe over here.
Yep.
And I think in archery, a lot of times, a lot of people try to play to the win. And in my opinion, you want to kind of play to the miss. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of what this app kind of shows you. Okay, if you miss, like, okay, look, because if you shoot an animal, you can have a really terrible setup and a field point, but if you shoot a deer in the heart, it's going to die,
Yep.
right? And so technically you can kill a deer with almost anything, but you want to play to your miss. Okay, what if worst case scenario, I go way high or way over here and miss a lot of the vitals, but I can still clip something, or I can, whatever. You want to play to your miss, and so I think that's what for me. That's why I changed to a three blade
Yeah,
anyway.
that's a
But
fair point. And on the play to the miss, that is why commonly you'll see people aiming just behind the shoulder because the
mm,
lungs are so big. And if you
yeah,
have a nice big expandable, now you have this much bigger target than the heart. And then you have the expandable, so now you're increasing the size of your cut. So now you can miss by even a little bit more. So yeah, I completely agree with that. So next, I want to talk about people get really wrapped up with momentum and kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is how hard something hits something. The formula is 1/2 times mass times velocity squared. If you hit something really hard, it's not guaranteed to die. You might break a rib, cool, but if you hit something really hard, it's not guaranteed to die. Arrows kill by slicing capillaries, arteries, veins, possibly like the diaphragm, for example. That's how arrows kill. High kinetic energy is cool, and it can help if you're like hitting some bone, a little bit, and then that momentum is going to carry you through. That's going to be a mass times velocity. Momentum, depending on which variable you use, P equals mv, m equals mv. That's going to be what's hitting and kind of pushing through. That's what's used with like collisions, like car collisions and things like that. Football collisions
yep,
are measured using momentum. So that's where kind of this comes in. Now, this is going to lead me to my next part, which is, um, and you can answer these in whatever order you want. So for the deer, let's just say, did you take into account like size of the cavity, weight of the deer, things like that? And then my other question, again, answer these in whatever order you'd like, is how do you quantify the score? And then what's your scaling system? So like in
yeah,
kinesiology, we talked about like exercise science, there's scales, there's scores. If you're 5'10", 150 pounds, you're in this category for like
yeah,
general health. If you're 5'10", 250 pounds, you're going to be probably class 2 obesity, things like that. So I know I'm asking you a lot of questions. I did on purpose so you can kind of tell the story how you'd like to and explain it how you'd like to. But um,
yeah.
yeah, how do you quantify the score? How do you make up the score? How do you kind of categorize it? And then for each animal, kind of what are the differences?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing for your kinetic energy momentum thing, I think an easy way for people to remember that I actually put in the app is kinetic energy gets you through the first shoulder, momentum gets you through the second shoulder. Is kind of how I just like simply put it to people, and they kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I get a little bit. Um, as far as the app, like it was basically almost a year of straight research to basically put a ton of animal inputs. And through it, we have about three or four algorithms that we've created in the inputs. And so there's actually 11, every single animal in the app has 11 different data points. And that's like body weight flinch rating, ideal arrow weight, adjusted arrow weight, minimum arrow weight, ideal speed, a minimum speed, and then a kinetic energy, momentum, weight algorithm,
Hmm.
um, and a couple of other things. And so we took all those things and basically, it's basically 11 data points where six algorithmic bell curves. Like, so think of like for flinch and kinetic energy.
Yep.
Uh, Flinch was something we had to dial in by the way. We'll talk more about that. But think of like a bell curve, right? Like you need a lot of flinch over here, and like the animal has a lot of flinch over here, and this animal over here doesn't have any flinch. So let's just talk about like a white-tailed deer and a hippo.
Sure. Great. Yeah.
Okay. And so there's a bell curve with that
Hmm.
kind of it's going to be more kinetic energy and momentum need over here. And it's going to be a little more flinch rating over here, is kind of how that whole thing is. So we have 11 data points. These five algorithms basically plug into the 11 data points of the animal. And then over top of those two layers are your arrow speed and weight that pop out one number.
Hmm.
So it's almost like a three-layer system and 19 different variables that populate your aeroballistic score. It's kind of like the easiest way to put it without talking for an hour about
Yeah. Yeah. That's
it.
fair. So with that, I'm just going to assume that different variables are weighted differently.
Yes. Oh yeah, a ton. And
So what's the
you know,
highest rated? Meaning what has kind of the biggest effect on your score and what's kind of the lowest rated?
but that's an interesting question because it's very like it's very animal specific.
Okay.
Like for instance, if your animal is a high flinch animal, which, just for sake of conversation, a high flinch animal, anecdotally, we've been able to say a high flinch animal, like a deer's high flinch because I see it jump my string or something like that.
Yep.
Well, now we have mounds of video evidence showing the actual flinch factor,
Yeah.
not just of a deer that is alert, but also a deer that's not alert and kind
Yep.
of everything in between, right? And so a lot of those animals of that same genus, deer, coos deer, antelope, those kinds of things are what we kind of consider high flinch animals. Now you might get like let's say a coos steer gets a 97% flinch rating,
Yep.
where a Roosevelt elk is still a high flinch animal, but it's going to be like an
For
82%
sure. Yeah.
flinch rating. Because at the same, like F equals MA for mass, right? You're you can't take two animals that have you could take two animals and let's just say that um their same muscular reflex. They have the same exact muscular reflex, but two different uh, body compositions. They
Yep.
cannot move at the same, like physically, they cannot move at the same speed.
Yeah, so let's give a quick analogy. In the NFL, we have linemen versus, we'll say Coos Deer's like wide receiver or like cornerback, right? Cornerbacks are even smaller.
Yeah, cornerback. Yeah, yeah,
Lineman is not as quick as a cornerback. I'm sorry to tell all the linemen out there, you're just not as quick. That's the way it
yeah,
is. And I feel like that's the analogy you're trying to make. Yeah, they could be similar musculature, right? They're both people. It's easier to move less mass. That's just all there is to it. So,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And again, you know, a elk and a deer can still be high flinch animals, but the rating system is still going to be a little bit different. Like an elk is going to be rated a little bit lower than a deer, mainly because of the body composition, a big part of it, right? And so that being said, your like if you have a high flinch animal, your speed is going to mess with your score more than momentum in a high
for
flinch
sure.
animal.
Yeah, because
But
they're
if you
like
have like
less
a
quick. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. But if you have like a low flinch animal, like a hippo or a muskox or something like that,
Yep.
then your kinetic energy is going to make or break your score there a lot more
Okay.
than speed. But also, obviously, speed plays into some of these, having kinetic energy momentum too, right?
Yep.
So but the weights and it's weighted a lot differently. Yes.
Yeah, very cool. So I'm gonna push you a little bit here. So you
Yep.
mentioned there's 11 different animals. First of all, what are those animals? And you kind of mentioned some of the
I
different.
know. So 11 different data points
I'm
for
sorry,
each
how many
animal.
different animals do you have on the app?
Oh gosh. Uh I think it's around 50.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. So you got the
Yeah.
North American 29.
Everything, like literally everything, to my knowledge, everything bow huntable in the world is on there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, super cool.
To my knowledge,
Yeah.
yes.
So that's probably why it took you a year. That's exciting.
Well, that's the difficult part is because obviously I haven't bow hunted every single one of these animals, and even
Mhm.
if you talk to people who've done the Grand Slam, they haven't done the Super Grand Slam, and so collecting that data was the longest, arduous part of this entire process. Um, yeah, and we could go into that, but that was what, yeah, definitely took the longest of this whole thing to make sure that was right because that has to be right to make everything else right.
Yep. So before we get into that, and we don't need to dive too deep into it, what is an animal that is kind of in the middle of all of these? Like if I was going to build one setup, I don't want to have three different arrow setups and two different bows. What's an animal that is kind of in the middle on out of all these animals, out of the 50 plus animals?
Mm, I would say I think somewhere in the like a Rocky Mountain elk
Okay.
is somewhere in that vicinity because um, once you start to hit a moose, pretty
Hmm.
much everything, if you just look at the body composition of the animal as you step up, 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 everything is pretty like there's a very nice curve until you
Yep.
hit the elk. and the elk's still good. Once you hit the moose, the momentum need starts to kind of drastically increase after a
Yep.
moose.
Yeah, and is
Is
that,
yeah.
I'm just gonna guess, is that because the cavity on the moose is just, it's not exponentially larger, but it's like quite sizably larger than that Rocky Mountain elk?
Yeah, well, I think it's obviously the body composition of the animal is just huge, and what comes with body composition a lot of times is bone density.
Yep.
And so again, playing for your miss, you know, can you kill a moose with a 400 grain arrow? Yeah, you can. If you shoot a moose in the shoulder with a 400 grain arrow, you're going to kill it? Probably not, right? And
Yep.
I'm not saying you need a 600 grain or 700 grain arrow. I'm not saying that, but it's probably going to. If I had to guess, right now it's going to steer you somewhere in the fives, 500s,
Yeah, maybe low to
right?
mid fives.
Yeah, yeah, somewhere in there. So, and that's the interesting thing too, is like when I was making this, I was like, dude, I'm making the most controversial thing in the world right now.
Yeah.
Because everyone's gonna have their thoughts on, no, this needs to be weighted this way, this needs to be
Yep.
weighted this way. And it's kind of wild, man. Overall, everyone has had given me just great feedback. They're like, this is super, super cool. Um, I'm still waiting. There's gonna be some haters at some point, I know. But even if I found that even if people disagree with the score, it's still pretty damn close. It's
Yep.
not far off. They're like, okay, I don't know about this, but like it's still pretty close to what I would rate it, even if I disagree with a certain metric.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And with that, there's always going to be exceptions. I heard a podcast years ago, and some guy said he killed an elk with a 350 grain arrow with a field tip.
Yeah,
That's a super extreme light arrow example and a field tip. That's insane.
yeah,
He's also an incredibly elite archer. So who knows? Maybe he was close enough you can see ribs and he shot between ribs. I don't know. But I've heard things like that. And then you hear
yeah,
guys, and I'm not to throw like, not to cast any shade, but like ranch fairies, like 700 grain arrow
yeah, yeah,
is unstoppable. That's super cool. It definitely is unstoppable. Is it overkill for some things? Possibly. You don't need it to
yeah,
pass through five deer. Passing through one's probably pretty good, right? So there's
yeah.
definitely always the extremes. I'm sure you're going to get that as this app gets more and more traction. So
Well,
just be
and
ready for that.
yeah, and it was cool. I've actually gone back and forth with Ranch Fairy already.
Nice.
He started following me, and I follow him, and um, we had a probably like a 2 day back and forth in the DMs about it.
Yeah.
And um, I think quantitatively, he's mostly right. I think the issue with the Ranch Fairies model for me is he thinks there should be a gold standard arrow that is across every animal spectrum, and it's
Okay.
impossible. Like when you have a coos deer over here and you have a moose over here, like can you shoot those with the same arrow? Yeah. Should you? No, probably not. um, or like a polar bear or something, right?
Yeah.
Like all these animals. And so it just seems like he wants one standard arrow for everything. Where I wanted people to be like, hey, I plugged this in for. I mean, I even like have Midwest whitetail and Southern whitetail because now
Yep.
being down
Yep.
here in South Carolina, these whitetails are so much smaller,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and they flinch more.
Yep. Well, they're faster, right? They're smaller. They're faster.
Yeah.
One
Yep.
thing I want to say with the Ranch Fairy, and if he hears this, feel free to get a hold of me, Troy. From what I've gathered, it sounds like he aims for the aortic arch, which is a really small, incredibly vital part of the heart. It's the top of the heart, and
Hmm.
that is what pumps blood to the body. So it sounds like he's aiming for the aortic arch, and I think the number one thing he hunts is pigs. So
Yep.
that's going to be forward. Pigs already have vitals that are a little further forward. Now you're going to be shooting through the shoulder, which pigs have that kind of cap or whatever that's called, that nice callus from rubbing their
Yeah.
tusks on there. I totally get it for what he's talking about. If you aim at the aortic arch, it's lights out. I'm pretty sure as a respiratory therapist, he's incredibly knowledgeable at respiratory therapy. That's also trying to shoot a quarter or a dime for some animals. I'm not good enough
And
to
pigs don't stay
at a
still.
live moving animal, and I'm a pretty darn good shot. If anybody wants to check out my Instagram stuff, I would say I'm at least average shooting, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to shoot a dime at an animal at 20 yards. Just
Hmm.
not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what he's doing, and I think that's why he likes that heavy arrow because he's aiming so far forward into the shoulder there. So I want to give him credit. I think what he's doing is really great for what he's trying to shoot for, but a lot of people don't shoot that far forward because they're not aiming for the aortic arch. People don't even know he's talking about the aortic arch. I listened to some of his stuff enough times and looked at some of the anatomy of a heart with my physiological training and knowledge. I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure he's talking about this. This is the shut-off switch. That's really cool. But if you're good enough to shoot that cool, I don't think most people are. So that's where it ties back into your saying we're going to try to build a setup kind of for that miss, right? So maybe aim a little bit
Yeah.
off the center of the shoulder and kind of go from there.
Yeah, building for the miss and building animal specific. I think
Yeah.
building something animal specific was my number one goal for this because I'm like, it again, it doesn't make sense to shoot one animal with every single arrow. It's just you need every animal has a different need, and so showing that need is really important to me.
Yeah. So two things. First statement, I think this could be super valuable for the person who is going to do a hunt they've saved up for 10 years, somebody back east in your neck of the woods coming out west here, they're going to go on their first elk hunt and nobody around them has ever shot an elk before. I think this is a great way to give them quantifiable evidence and
Mm-hmm.
try to give them a really good starting point, right? Because you can always hearsay and there's lots of keyboard warriors and experts that have never shot an elk. So I think it's super cool for that. I'm really excited about that. And then my question is this going to be something that you're going to be, I don't want to say like changing, but maybe like updating as you get new data and things like that? Is this going to essentially grow as we gain our knowledge in like animal anatomy? Maybe if you can kind of get a hold of some guides and what their experiences are, right? They've got more experience than anybody. What are your
Yeah,
plans on kind of making sure this doesn't stay stagnant in 2026 as our knowledge advances?
yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And that's something we're constantly updating the app. We're actually going through a huge update right now that it's going to hit hopefully the end of June, probably the very first week, might be even like July 4th weekend,
Hmm.
somewhere in there. Um, but yeah, I think that's maybe arguably the most important question is with the increased knowledge, like the app needs to increase as well. And we're super dedicated to doing that. And we want to do that because the whole point of this thing is to help people ethically kill animals quicker.
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny because this thing has turned into there's a whole tax section now in the app. There's a whole hunt section now, the gear section, a range section. I don't know if you ever do Strava, like running or biking,
Okay,
but
yeah.
like there's a whole Strava section now, basically of shooting on the range that you can like connect with your friends and so basically what's out right now for people is kind of the beta. What's going to come out at the end of July is going to be a significant update. It's going to be really good.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I'm excited to check that out. So with that, the last things I want to talk about are with your kinesiology background, being in medical sales, you're pulling back an 80-pound bow. That's not easy for everybody. What is your kind of fitness regimen? What do you do to stay in shape year round?
I'm kind of a psycho, man. I do pretty much everything and anything. A couple years ago, I did the Leadville 100 mountain bike.
Nice.
Um, I actually have a 52-mile trail run that I'm doing in 3 weeks, and actually the Bighorn run in Wyoming.
Yep.
Um, and I don't know, I've done some Chattanooga Ironman. Um, Pretty much any big race every year that I can get my hands on, if it's endurance or something, I'll do it. Through high school, I was just a three-sport athlete: football, basketball, baseball.
Yep.
Obviously, wasn't going to go pro in any of those things, and I was always like very a big sprint athlete
Hmm.
growing up. And then so I was never into endurance at all. And so now in my being in my 30s, endurance things are super intriguing to me. And I've actually done a couple of the last man standing races.
Nice.
So I entered a local one here and actually won it. So that was cool.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And then I went to, I don't know if you know who Chad Wright is, but
Mm-mm.
okay, so he's a Navy SEAL guy that's out of Georgia, but he's kind of famous for doing some last man standing and things. And I went and did his, and his format was tough. I think we had like 56 people in that one. I got 13th overall in that one.
Nice.
And that was a month and a half ago or something. But so pretty much anything really hard and daunting, I'm trying to sign up for. My nemesis so far is swimming. I
Yep.
hate swimming. It's rough on me. I'm not good at it. First, it's the one thing I suck at
Yeah.
really bad. But past that, yeah, anything big endurance, I'm always trying to do something, and then obviously just lifting in between as much as possible. So, and I will say, going from 70 to 80 pound pull was a drastic difference. I
Okay.
was at what pounds do you shoot?
I shoot 67. I
Okay,
can shoot more, but I like that I can pull it back effortlessly and hold it back forever.
yeah,
And in my opinion, that's all I need. Although if I see the score on your app for elk and it's below like 85, I might be beefing it up a little bit.
yeah. Well, it's a couple things there. So I talked to John Dudley at the when I met Josh Jones and
Yep.
at that at his archery shop. I saw John Dudley, and he talked to me for like 20 minutes. Super
Yeah,
nice
he
guy.
seems awesome.
Yeah. But he was talking about these high poundage bows. He was saying in his videos, man, he pulls 59 pounds.
I believe
He's
it.
like, he's like, people don't realize that when I'm shooting in my backyard or at tax mostly or whatever, he shoots 59, 60 pounds. Um, and it's like a good weight forever. He said the only time he really ever pulls back 80 or whatever is when he's hunting. That's
Yeah.
almost it. And he was saying that when he used to work at Matthews, him and just a couple other guys are the only ones who could pull back these 100-pound bows. And it was just nuts. And when a bow explodes at 100 pounds, it's incredible,
Yeah.
like incredibly bad. Um, so yeah, it's interesting where we're going with the poundage. And like I said, going from 70 pounds shooting that for 10 years to 80 was a I can't believe how much I had to work. I've never had to work my left arm as much in my back, but now every single time I shoot with my bow,
Yep.
I go do some pulls with my left arm
Yep.
because otherwise I'll get
Balance.
like out of tune and
Yeah.
I just feel terrible.
Well, super cool. Yeah, I've pulled back 80-pound bows before. I can do
Yeah.
it. But I like to shoot my bow pretty much every
Yeah.
day. So I just pulled back 60, and then now that I'm going to be getting into outdoor, I'm just going to get it ready for hunting and just practice with that. So yeah, like 65, 67 is what I'm doing. So
Yep.
last question is, I'm assuming you're going to be shooting a bunch of deer in South Carolina. Do you have any plans out west or any hunt plans?
Not out west this year. No, I've been just accumulating elk points for Colorado.
Okay,
So I think I
nice.
have 4 or 5 now.
Okay.
And so I'll probably cash those in next year, in 2 years,
Yep.
and primarily just head to the Midwest and hunt whitetail is
Very
my
cool.
plan this year. I've kind of ran out of vacation days this year, so but usually November I carve out 1 or 2 weeks and just run after the rut in the Midwest, and that's
Yeah,
kind of my big thing.
super cool. Well, if you ever want to try to draw Idaho, maybe I could host you.
Yeah.
I found some elk the other day when I was bear hunting on accident, so now I think I'm like awesome at finding elk. We'll see if it pans out this fall for me.
Have you got anything good this year yet?
This year I went out once for bear. We just had a kid, so
Oh, okay, yeah,
got
yeah.
out much. This fall I've got just the general Idaho tags. I should draw archery antelope and then elk, deer, and then I'll try to get a bear. We'll see if I can find one.
Yeah,
So, yep, one of the perks of living in Idaho is you get a bunch of tags and it's not that expensive. So that was
yeah,
definitely
100%.
strategic when I moved here. My wife wasn't happy at first, but I'm happy. So at least one of us is
Yeah,
happy.
there you go.
All right, Nick, last thing here before we wrap up. Where can people find you? Where can they download the app? And if you have anything else that you want to let the people know.
Yeah, no, it's just Fletch brand on Instagram, and there's the thing. It's Fletched app, FLETCHED app, and like I said, there's a really big update coming at the end of June, beginning of July here. It's going to have it has a whole tack section where you can actually put your elevation in
Oh,
and
sweet.
see how your tape is going to change at elevation compared to where you shoot at home. There's even a year to year buck logger in there that's going to be pretty interesting because I don't think the trail cams have done a great job of doing that personally. And there's a lot of features. One of the cool quick features is there's nothing. We don't really have anything besides the manual counter. Even if you watch John Dudley on Knock On, he just has a manual counter for his shots
Yep.
every day.
Yep.
And so the way that the range works, it actually when you go into the app, you set up in your gear, your bow and your arrow and everything.
Hmm.
And then your bow that you use on the range actually logs the shots.
Oh,
And so, and even if you hunt, it auto logs that shot. Like, so while you're hunting, you can actually do an active hunt. And then, like, you can log a shot during the hunt and it'll timestamp it. And it'll also log that shot to your bow. So you can actually go back and see, oh, this year I hunted 60, 7 hours and total shots on my bow were 1,500 shots. And it has a whole string health metric that kind of says the estimated string health of your bow.
wow.
So that's
That's
a
incredible.
pretty neat little feature in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. There's a lot more to this app than I realized. I didn't dive in at first
It's a
because I wanted to
lot.
give you the chance to explain everything. So,
It's
super cool.
hard to fit it all in, man, but there's almost too many features in this app.
Yeah, I'm sure it's hard to keep it all straight. All right, Nick. Well, thanks for jumping on. Yeah, anybody, if you have questions, feel free to message Nick. I was able to get a hold of you really easily, so I'm just going to assume you're like that with everybody. So if you've got questions,
Yeah.
shoot Nick a message. You can message me, and I'm just going to forward you right to Nick there. But yeah, thanks for jumping on. Thanks for taking the time. I'm excited to see this update coming up soon. And
Yeah.
yeah, just thanks again for your time. And for those listening, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next podcast.
Thanks, Devin.